Hi, welcome. It's time for A Woman for Women video, and this is a one for the 18th, and so that means it's about women and men together. I am Susan Maud Buchser-Lochocki, a artist, mother, and presidential candidate, so a stateswoman and peace promoter. Welcome. So on today's episode or video, I want to talk about relationships, what's good and bad, and getting divorced. So I am old enough now where I've had many experiences in life, and I think when deciding who to marry and or if you're in a marriage or relationship, when to leave, it depends on you, your tolerance, and also it depends on if you have children, how are your children seeing your marriage or relationship? Are they seeing good things or bad things? And children mimic what they see. So know that. So first off, I'm going to say, if you're going to be in a relationship with somebody and eventually a marriage, make sure that you have things that you like to do together, at least two major things that you like to do together, and that if you get pregnant or if one of you gets sick, you can still do them. So I know that there are a lot of people out there who are sportive or physically creative, but if suddenly that were to stop, if suddenly you could not do things because you're pregnant or because you're injured, do you have other things to fall back on? So this is when you look for somebody to spend your life with. If you're planning on doing the life experience, this is something to look for. The other thing is that I don't think that humans, well, first, we haven't always lived so long. And living so long and being married to the same person for 60 years is not for everyone. And it's okay. Being together for 40 years is also not for everyone. Not everybody can do it, and that's okay. And even married for 20 years is not so easy. It's not for everybody. But, you have to know yourself, and you should try to be as authentic to anyone you're seriously considering spending a long time with. You don't want to hide who you really are, so that they know who you are and you know who you are. And so I guess the first step is to know who you are. But then the next thing is, if you are in a marriage or in a relationship and you find yourself not spending so much time together and doing a lot of arguing, that is up to you if you want to tolerate that sort of lifestyle. But if there are children involved, you need to notice if this behavior is affecting your children. And if it is, you may want to get out of the relationship or the marriage. And I can only say from my life experience and things that I've seen around me. Now, some of you may know that I am divorced and that I've even had several longer, not terribly long, but 5-year relationships. And usually, when something ends, it opens doors to other growth. So it isn't the worst idea, anyways, to change periodically. But in the case of my marriage, my ex-husband, he recently found someone else that has a good combination of his interests. And so I'm really happy for them that they are found each other and that they are together and doing the things that I could not do because I'm just not so as sportive as he would have liked. And then I myself am doing my thing, being creative and being an artist. So we were at a point in our marriage that it came time to admit that we were no longer growing together and that we would be better off separated and in separate ways. And I did try to stay with the marriage until a certain point, until our daughter was a certain age. And I made sure that she knew that it had nothing to do with her, that it was simply we grew apart. And this really does happen because, being in love is one thing, but starting a family is another. And then having tragedy and pressures, and then a sick child, it also puts a lot of stress on the relationship. And it's just creates a very stressful environment. So, we did have a lot of obstacles to contend with in our marriage. And it got to a point where we weren't healthy for each other anymore. And I wanted to go in one direction and he wanted to go in another, and we weren't going at all in the same direction. So then it was just time to admit that it's okay, it's better if we're not together. And so we got divorced. And I think he's very happy now. So it's 5 years later, and he has, I believe, the life that he wants. And I know I have the life that I want. And our daughter is also happily living her life now. She was, 20 when we got divorced. So, we did our best to sort of make the right choices and the right decisions at the right time. And so there is life after divorce or breakup. Some people don't get married, so it's a breakup. But you have to realize for yourself what you will tolerate and set boundaries. And then also, if you have children, you have to see if that's affecting them. And you need to make sure that they know that it has nothing to do with them, and that um, yeah, it's just better if people separate. Now, I also want to say that sometimes, so we had a fairly reasonable life where, you know, it wasn't that we were either one of us bad people or somebody addicted to something. It was just simply growing apart. And but then there's abuse that really happens in a marriage or in a partnership, or in a relationship where somebody is either doing drugs or somebody is doing physical abuse. Sometimes you can't wait. Sometimes you have something happen and you got to get out right then and immediately. So, yes, if you are being physically abused or mentally abused, even, there's also narcissistic abuse, um, and gaslighting and all sorts of things. So, if you think you are in that situation, then you do need to get out and you need to try to get your children out too. And it's not easy parenting with an abuser. So you need to, as the mature person in the relationship, you need to take action to make sure that you and your children are safe. And, um, you know, abuse, maybe some people can be healed or overcome their abusive tendencies while in a relationship. But I find it works better if you get divorced or if you get separated or if you break up, because then they're stuck dealing with their problem. They have no place to hide. Well, if you're in a relationship, the ability to hide the problem is quite high, and nobody grows and changes. Then the abuse just continues. So I highly recommend that if you are in an abusive relationship, that you leave. Not for another person, but for you. For you and your children, especially. And let that other person, the abuser, let them face their problems and solve them so that they can grow and become a more whole human being as well. Because these people won't change if they don't have to. And if you help them to hide their problem, you're an enabler. And you don't want to be an enabler to an abuser, because they will just continue to abuse. So, and an abuser can also be, it can be either partner, the male or the female, or if you're in a same-sex relationship, it can be anyone. So, just be aware that this happens. Then, I suppose sometimes even children can be born with hormonal issues, and they could also be an abuser. So a third party in the family could even possibly be somehow an abuser. So also be aware that it could be coming from the children. But that's probably, I'm going to say that's rare, but I'm sure it does happen. Their nature makes changes to humanity to see if this new change is a good one or a bad one, to always make sure that humanity is at its best level. And so if you have sort of like schizophrenic people, um, sometimes they're born with that. I believe. Um, I mean, I'm not a doctor, and I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist or anything, and I even don't fully understand certain brain dysfunctions. So maybe instead of labeling like schizophrenia, maybe I should label uh, brain dysfunction. Sometimes you're born with it, and sometimes you get it through life experiences or through an accident. If you fall down or fall off a bike or something like that, these things can all uh, alter your brain patterns. Um, so whether it's you were born with it or you get it somehow, um, it can come from children as well. And that can be very hard to know how to deal with it. There, I don't really have experience, so I cannot say. But I suppose um, therapy will help, and sometimes probably you may have to separate yourself from the child. And yeah, again, if people are forced to deal with their problems, they're forced to deal with their problems, and then they grow. But if you coddle them constantly, they will never learn to deal with their problems, and they will continue. So this is what I've experienced in life. And there are people who are very good at staying married or in a long-term relationship, and then there are people who are not good at it. And there are times in our life where we might not be good at long-term, but then later we are. Or there are people who were always in a long-term relationship and never had other relationships, and then they decide they want that. So I think we need to realize that life is long now. A lot of us are living quite long lives, and it is difficult to not live out our dreams. We ultimately want to live out our dreams. And because we have this one life, I'm going to say it's not wrong to live out your dreams. So leave space for yourself. Make sure you know what your dreams are. But also understand that your spouse or your boyfriend or girlfriend is also a human too, with dreams of their own. And that's kind of where I think relationships are. I don't think it's wrong to have multiple loves in your life. You know, there's your first love, then there might be your marriage love or your parental love where you're with somebody and you're creating a family with them. And then there is another love when you're sort of in your after parenting time. And then there might even be one more love. I'm not there yet, so I don't know. But yeah, it could be that there are, 3 or 4 loves, potential loves that are deep and meaningful in our lives. Yeah. So be open to these possibilities. Don't settle for bad behavior. Life is too short, but it's also too long to live every day with bad behavior. You deserve better. And try to love as best you can. And I don't know what else I can say. Marriage, long-term relationships can be wonderful and beautiful. But then they can also take a bad turn. So it is best to look out for yourself. And if you're, a parent, then you have to look out for your children too. That's your job. So yeah, take care of you. This doesn't mean that small things like, I don't know, snoring, that's not a reason to get divorced. I don't know. There's just various things that are crucial. If you have two things that you guys like to do together, then you're in a good way. And if there are two things that you don't need physical abilities for, then you're heading in a good way. However, if your two things are physical activities like playing tennis and going on long bike rides, and then somebody is pregnant or somebody is injured and they can't do that anymore, then you might have some real problems because you don't know how to be together anymore. So you need to have common interests of things that are non-physical activities. And yes, watching TV and movies, that's something, but that's not really the strongest thing to go on either. So find other activities that you like to do together. Go on walks together. I know that's physical, but it's something you can still do if you're pregnant or in a wheelchair. And there's cooking, building, playing games, like board games, or I suppose video games. Yeah. Okay, so I think that's it for now. Yeah, next month is February, so I guess I got to do one on love next time. So this is about being aware of the health of your lifestyle and then taking charge. So thank you for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed this, and I wish all of us peace in our lives. That's what it's ultimately about. Peace and harmony and love. Love for self and love for the ones around us, right? So yeah. Thank you for stopping by. I wish you a nice day wherever you are. Bye for now.